Crab, any short-tailed member of the crustacean order Decapoda, phylum Arthropoda, especially the brachyrans, infra-order Brachyura, or true crabs, but also other forms such as the anomorons, suborder Anomora, which include the hermit crabs. Decapods occur in all oceans, in fresh water, and on land. About 10,000 species have been described. Unlike those of other decapods, for example, shrimp, lobster, crayfish, crabs' tails are curled under the thorax, or midsection. The carapace, upper body shield, is usually broad. The first pair of legs is modified into chelae, or pincers. Most crabs live in the sea. Even the land crabs, which are abundant in tropical countries, usually visit the sea occasionally and pass through their early stages in it. The river crab of southern Europe, the Lenten crab, Potamon fluviatile, is an example of the freshwater crabs abundant in most of the warmer regions of the world. As a rule, crabs breathe by gills, which are lodged in a pair of cavities beneath the sides of the carapace, but in the true land crabs the cavities become enlarged and modified so as to act as lungs for breathing air. Walking or crawling is the usual mode of locomotion, and the familiar, sidelong gait in the common shore crab is characteristic of most members of the group. The crabs of the family Portunidae, as well as some others, swim with great dexterity by means of their flattened paddle-shaped legs. Like many other crustaceans, crabs are often omnivorous and act as scavengers, but many are predatory and some are vegetarian. Though no crab is truly parasitic, some live commensally with other animals. One example is the little pea crab, Pinnatheridae, which lives within the shells of mussels and a variety of other mollusks, worm tubes, and echinoderms and shares its host's food. Another example is the coral gall crab, Papilococinidae, which irritates the growing tips of certain corals so that they grow to enclose the female in a stony prison. Many of the sluggish spider crabs, Magidae, cover their shells with growing seaweeds, zoophytes, and sponges, which afford them a very effective disguise. The giant crab of Japan, Macrochira camphori, and the Tasmanian crab, Pseudocarcinus gigas, are two of the largest known crustaceans. The former may span nearly 4 meters, 12 feet, from tip to tip of its outstretched legs. The Tasmanian crab, which may weigh well over 9 kilograms, 20 pounds, has much shorter, stouter claws. The major one may be 43 centimeters, 17 inches, long. The body, or carapace, of a very large specimen may measure 46 centimeters, 18 inches, across. At the other extreme are tiny crabs measuring in adulthood scarcely more than a centimeter or 2 in length. Better known anomoran crabs are the hermit crabs, which live in empty shells discarded by gasteropod mollusks. As the crab grows, it must find a larger shell to occupy. If the supply of empty shells of appropriate size is limited, competition for shells among hermit crabs can be severe. In tropical countries, hermit crabs of the family Coenobitidae live on land, often at considerable distances from the sea, to which they must return to release their larvae. The large robber, or coconut, crab, another anomoron, of the Indo-Pacific islands, Birgus latro, has given up the habit of carrying a portable dwelling, and the upper surface of its abdomen has become covered by shelly plates. As in most crustaceans, the young of nearly all crabs, when newly hatched from eggs, are very different from the parents. The larval stage, known as the zoea, is a minute transparent organism with a legless, rounded body that swims and feeds in the plankton. After casting off its skin several times, the enlarging crab passes into a stage known as the megalopa, in which the body and limbs are more crab-like, but the abdomen is large and not folded up under the thorax. After a further molt, the animal assumes a form very similar to that of the adult. There are a few crabs, especially those living in fresh water, that do not pass through a series of free-living larval stages but instead leave the eggshell as miniature adults. Many crabs are eaten by humans. The most important and valuable are the edible crab of the British and European coasts, Cancer pigurus, and, in North America, the blue crab, Colinectes sapidus, of the Atlantic coast, and the Dungeness crab, Cancer magister, of the Pacific coast. In the Indo-Pacific region, the swimming crabs, Scylla and Portunus, related to the American blue crab, are among the most important sources of seafood. Commercially valuable anomorans are the lithodid, literally stone, crabs, of which the so-called king crab, Paralithodus camcatica, found off Japan and in the Bering Sea and Alaskan waters is the most important. A blue crab's typical lifespan is between 3 and 4 years. Blue crabs are not threatened or endangered. However, habitat loss and nutrient loading are some of the larger issues faced by this species. The crab's life cycle. Dungeness crabs, for instance, live on average 10 years. They go through quite a few cycles as infants and adolescents and do not fully mature until they are about 3 years old. Here is a quick review of the Dungeness crab's life cycle. The larval phase, which lasts about 4 months, consists of 5 zooel and 1 megalopa stage. This is the time when the crab looks nothing like one, just a little blip floating around trying to grow strong. During this stage, they are only about 1 millimeter long and continue to molt as they increase in size. During the megalopa stage, post-larva, the Dungeness crab starts to resemble an actual crab, but very tiny and cute. In the spring and summer, these little guys stay close to shore to stay protected from rough waters and predators. During this stage, they are only about half the size of a dime. As the crab continues to molt, it becomes larger and healthier and reaches the juvenile stage of the life cycle, which they will remain in for 2 years. During this time, they will molt up to 6 times. They continue to spend most of their time in shallow waters where it is easy for them to feed and survive. Like most small living things, crabs have multiple predators that they must keep on their radar throughout the day. Taking the Dungeness crab for example, their natural predators include halibut, dogfish, sculpins, octopus, sea otters, and even other species of crab. Salmon also feed on crab larvae. Obviously, the crab species are much more vulnerable when they are in the first stages of life until they are considered adult, which is why babies and juveniles tend to stay closer to the shore where they can hide in plants and bury themselves underneath the sand. The good news is that crabs can protect themselves quite well from some predators with the use of their powerful pincers and hard exoskeleton. Human behavior. Silly humans. We just can't resist a delicious crab. The harm comes along when overfishing populations of crab take place. While there are laws and regulations put into place to attempt to prevent overfishing from happening, it still occurs. Crabs are also vulnerable from the use of certain fishing gear and vessels, which is obviously used to catch them, but can also ruin habitats and cause poor water quality.